G'day everybody, Brent Sternberg here from Casey Radio, joined again by Brent and Jonty Rhodes as we're joined again with some Victorian Football League. We had a few weeks off there, Jonty, but good to be back at the football next week, and hopefully we can go uninterrupted from here to the end of the season, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, Brent. Great to be back on the podcast after a couple of weeks off. But yeah, we got some footy again in Victoria, and this week we're going to get some people back at the footy, which is terrific to see.
Yeah, a couple of games that we were at last week, a little bit bizarre with no one being there. But Billy Buttons McMartin sent his effects mic out there to not really pick up any crowd noise at all, just the clashing of bodies and the boot hitting the ball, which was interesting. But hopefully we get some fans back. It looks like we will for round 11. Let's go back and have a look at round 10 though first, Jonty. Of course, last time we had a chat, it was round 6. And then we went into hibernation for a few weeks, and we appeared on the weekend in round 10. It began on Friday with a couple of games, a Friday afternoon and Friday evening game. The earlier game was the curtain raiser to the AFL Friday night clash between the Cats and the Dogs. It was Footscray who beat Geelong in the reserves. Footscray 14-12-96, knocked off the Cats 9-9-63. It was the Bulldogs by 33 points in that one to remain undefeated. Josh Shackey with 6 goals in that one. Jonty and Pat Lipinski with an enormous game as well, 36 disposals and 3 goals. The Bulldogs in the reserves keep ticking away. That's a good win on the road in Geelong, where not too many teams venture there and come away with the 4 points.
Yeah, shaped as a huge one with, I think, 39 AFL or past AFL listed players in the game. Obviously, a couple of those pulled out before the game was started because of the AFL. Geelong kicked the first 26 points of this game. They led 4-2 before the Bulldogs kicked a goal. Lipinski got them going. And from then on, it was all Bulldogs as they ran out dominant winners, as you said, by 5 goals. Very hard to see. It's going to take a massive effort for anyone to beat Footscray based on what happened down at the Cattery. It was Geelong's 400th match in the VFL era, their 350th home match, and it ended up being their 100th home loss. So a big win for Footscray to keep them undefeated in second spot on the ladder.
Friday night out at Skybus Stadium under lights there, it was Frankston back on the winners list, 13-15-93, knocking off the Bull Ants 10-5-65, the Dolphins by 28 points in the end. A good win for the Dolphins back at home, considering there was no Nathan Freeman, who was named in the side, but he was laid out, but it didn't seem to affect the Dolphins too much.
No, not for the most part. Freeman just had an issue in the pre-match, in the warm-up. It's just very minor. They reckon he would have been able to play the following day, but they pulled him out of the game, and he'll be right to play Collingwood this week, hopefully. Yeah, they dominated pretty much the Bull Ants. They conceded a goal before the ball was even bounced to Jack Boyd, who then made headlines for even higher flying reasons later in that first quarter. I'm sure you saw that when he broke the top layer of lights down at Frankston. So they're going to have to do some repairs there. He was that high. But yeah, Frankston got out by 50 points at three-quarter time. Never looked like losing, although the Bull Ants fought the game out beautifully with 5-1 in the last quarter to bring it back to 28. Tom Wilson was terrific for the Bull Ants. Mitch Cox, 5 goals, an unbelievable performance for the Dolphins. Great to see them back on the winners list and back in the 8.
To the first Saturday afternoon back as well, we had a bunch of games and some really interesting results. Not least this one here, Jonty, up in Queensland. The Gold Coast Suns 19-17, 131 defeated Aspley 18-17, 125. 1 goal in it at the end in a game where the goals were coming thick and fast. Poor old Aspley kicked 18 goals and still couldn't get the job done. Matty Hammelman kicked 6 of those. He keeps kicking goals, but unfortunately his little bag there of half a dozen wasn't enough for the Hornets.
I did neglect to mention quickly that Frankston broke a 7-match losing streak against the Blues Bull Ants in that game dating back to 2016. In this game, yeah, Aspley dominated the first half. They raced out to a 41-point lead at half-time in the game, as we saw Hammelman in dominant form again. But Gold Coast did what they did to Sydney last week. They came against the Swans. It was 38 points just before half-time. This time it was 41 points at halftime. By three-quarter time, they were in front after kicking 8 goals to 2 in both matches. And then they got themselves, I think, 18 points or 20 points in front in the last quarter, the Suns. Gold Coast Aspley came again. And it just ended up being a ripper game, a shootout. The highest score either team has kicked at Graham Road Oval. Another narrow loss for Aspley. I think that's 4 or 5 by under 10 points. So while they're 1-7, they're not that far off the pace, the Hornets.
Another team that suffered a close defeat on Saturday afternoon in our broadcast game was Coburg. North Melbourne beat them in Arden Street. North Melbourne in the end, 11-11-77. Knocked off the Burgers, 11-8-74. It was the Kangas by 3 points in that one. It's Coburg's second loss this year by under a kick. And it was a gut punch for a Coburg team that halfway through the last quarter looked the winners, Jonty, but a couple of late goals for North Melbourne was enough to see them on the winners list. And it's their second win in a row, other side of the break.
Yeah, huge kudos to North Melbourne there. It looked like at one stage before the Essendon game, they were 0-5. They had a percentage of about 27. They weren't going to win a game. They weren't going to be competitive in a game. And they've come out, they've beaten the Bombers. Now they've beaten Coburg. And I think pretty much put paid to it's a hard call, pretty much put paid to the finals hopes of both those teams. Coburg does have all their home games still to come, but they're going to need to be winning them by good margins and against good teams, because I think those home games include Southport, Williamstown, Werribee, and maybe even Box Hill Hawks. So they're going to have to do everything right now, Coburg, after going 0-4 in their history against the Kangas.
What about the top of the table? Southport Sharks, 24-13, 157. Defeated, who did they defeat? I've forgotten to write the team down.
Brisbane Lions.
Brisbane Lions.
Yeah.
Brisbane, I haven't even got them written down on my sheet here. 7-8-50. I've got the score, but they were a long way adrift. The Sharks by 107. Their third win of 100 plus points this year for Southport. Billy Gowers with 8 goals. The Sharks keep on keeping on, and still they sit atop the pile, Jonty.
Yeah, and another 41 disposals to Jacob Dawson, too, the former Gold Coast Sun, who, how he is not still at the Gold Coast Suns has got me, especially considering how they're going. Yes, the last time these two teams met was in the 2019 NEAFL Grand Final, and the Brisbane Lions won that game by 76 points. So that is a 183-point turnaround in the space of 18 months and no head-to-head games. Huge changeover, of course, in the experience of both teams. A lot of academy kids playing for the Lions. I think the Southport team brought in 10 ex-AFL players from that day, including Dawson and Gowers and the boys from Footscray, the boys from Gold Coast. But yeah, their highest ever score against the Lions, their biggest ever win against the Lions. And yeah, 7-1, 174%. They are flying, Southport. It's great to see, and they're a genuine chance this year.
Werribee are building into the season as well after a bit of a sluggish start. 15-8-98. They beat GWS 7-8-50. It was the Tigers by 48 points in that one. Werribee had 11 goal kickers in this one. It was a 7-goal second quarter that set up a good win for the Tigers, Jonty, who you expected big things from this year. Like I say, not the best of starts in the first sort of month or so, but they're starting to come along nicely now. Werribee.
Yeah, they lost the first 2 games at home, 0-2. Question marks were being raised. But yeah, 4 consecutive victories since then by big margins. Their percentage is over 200. One of only 2 teams now with that figure after Footscray dropped down to 197. Yeah, they're sitting just outside the top 4, looking quite ominous, Werribee. And and with Tom Gribble playing his 100th game this weekend, they're going to take some beating again. It was Nathan Cooper's 50th game for Werribee last week, and 50th NEAFL VFL match, I should say, playing for Werribee. And Reece Pollock for GWS played his 50th game as well. So congratulations to both of those.
Carlton on the winners list, 12-11-83. They beat Port Melbourne 10-8-68. The Blues by 15 points in this one. And it is testing times now, Jonty, for Port Melbourne, who are at risk of not playing finals. A team that has been a staple in the finals under the tutelage there of Gary Ayres. They're a long, long way off the pace now.
Yeah, missed only once under Gary Ayres since 2008. I think that was in 2015. They're now 1-5. Most of those losses have been close. Apart from that one quarter against Astley in round one, they haven't been blown away in any game. I think this one might be, in fact, one of their biggest other losses. And they led this by 20 points, I think, in the third quarter, and going very, very nicely. The Blues, unlucky, of course, Port Melbourne. The Blues wielded the axe at AFL level, and Port Melbourne had to put up with the likes of Levi Casbolt and Mark Murphy, who was remarkably making his VFL debut, Sam Petreski-Seaton, guys like this, and in the end, Carlton just overwhelmed them in a tight game. Yeah, it's a long, long way back from Port Melbourne, but this week would be the perfect place for them to start.
It would indeed. We'll get to that in just a moment. The two games on the Sunday, Box Hill 15-12, 102 beat the Bombers 7-9-51. The Hawks comfortably in the end by 51 points. Box Hill, they kicked 11 of the first 12 goals in this one to put this one to bed early, Johnny.
Yeah, they did. And while Essendon were competitive in the second half, the damage was well and truly done. Box Hill breaking a 4-match losing streak against Essendon dating back to 2015 and doing it in style. Essendon's lowest score against Box Hill at Windy Hill at 7-9, 8-9 was the previous lowest. So I think the Bombers are going to battle from here, but the Hawks humming along nicely, 5-2 up into the top four. Sam Mitchell's got them going after a slow start for them, as well as we saw that Werribee had the same issue. But yeah, Box Hill's up and about. Good to see. They'll be hard to beat from now on.
And in the final game of the round was the grand final rematch, and it was the match of the round. Williamstown 11-8-74. The Tigers 10-14-74. So no winner in the end. It was an absolute barnstorming last quarter and a game that went right down to the final kick, and a little bit of drama at Downer Oval, Jonty.
Yeah, it certainly was. Right down to the end, Williamstown, Mitch Hibbard got a free kick for a push in the back against Hugo Ralph Smith, about 50 metres out, right on the paint of 50. His long shot at goal sailed right to the line. Garrett McDonough for the Tigers knocked it back into play. Now, if that ball had have bounced on its end and gone back past McDonough and through for a behind, the point would have counted and Williamstown would have won. But because Adam Marcon slapped it through, propelled it forward, as soon as he touched the ball, it is dead and the game is over. Some people didn't know that. Full credit to Jason Bennett, who did straight away. And yeah, I wrote that the sequel was as good as the original, borrowing a line from several years ago. And it certainly was. What an absolute cracker of a game, befitting a grand final rematch. Williamstown's 50th draw in their history, would you believe? There's a little one for you to put in the memory bank. And Harrison McCready playing his 50th NEFL VFL game in that match.
Yeah, no, a terrific game, and the points shared in the end. And I suspect we're going to see these two teams go at it again later in the season, if not in September again. Let's have a look at the ladder, shall we, Jonty? A ladder that's a little bit all over the place, with some teams playing throughout the bye, north of the Murray River, and the teams in Victoria not playing. So there's all sorts of crazy stuff happening with games in hand and whatever. But don't tell that to the Southport Sharks, who sit pretty on top of the ladder, 7-1, and looking down at the teams below them. Below them in that second position is Footscray, who move up into second position with Casey on the bye last week. The teams on the bye, incidentally, Collingwood, Sydney, Sandringham, and the Casey Demons, they all return this week. So Footscray in second position, 4 points back of Southport, but with a couple of games in hand. Casey in third position, 8 points behind Southport, but with 3 games in hand. Box Hill from nowhere into the top 4. Williamstown in 5th. Werribee, Geelong and Frankston, like you say, up into the 8. The Tigers are the first team out of the 8 in 9th position. Please don't have any jokes about that, Jonty, or I'll end this Zoom meeting right now. Port Melbourne all the way down in 21st position, and the Bull Ants are our final team awaiting their first win of the season. Any thoughts on the ladder before we head to round 11, Jonty, keeping in mind no comments about the Tigers in 9th, please?
Greg Champion never crossed my mind until you brought it up. So we'll move on from there. Yeah, to be honest with you, a lot of teams have games in hand. A lot of teams are down near the bottom, struggling. I'm looking at the 14 teams that aren't in the 8, and even though you're seeing a team like Collingwood sitting there in 11th at 3-2, still ahead of the ledger, I'm finding it hard to see anyone other than Richmond sneaking in at this stage. I'm certain that Richmond will get in there and quite potentially could still get up to the top 4. But yeah, the teams below that all will have to do something special to find their way into the top 8 by the end of the season. And just before we leave that round, I neglected to mention Connor Stackelberg from Aspley, 50 games as well. So congratulations to him. And your boy, Derek Egmalesi-Smith, kicked his first VFL goal in his 34th game, which is a terrific effort for him too.
Wonderful, rightio. Let's head along to round 11, shall we, Jonty? Begins on Friday up at South Pine Sports Complex. This one at 11:35 a.m. It's the Brisbane Lions who are not enjoying their start to their new life as a VFL affiliate member. They're going to play Geelong, who are coming off a disappointing loss at home at Cardinia Park to the Bulldogs last Friday. How do you see this one, Brisbane and Geelong?
Yeah, tough one to pick on this. The Cats obviously going very nicely, although they were overrun by Footscray last week. The Brisbane Lions, you would think they'd be strong at home. It hasn't really proven to be the case. And yeah, an 11:35 a.m. start on a Friday morning. It really is prime time, isn't it? It's certainly one to sit down on Friday morning and get your early footy fix after, of course, what we expect to be a great Thursday night game between those two clubs. But yeah, I think the Brisbane Lions have got too many out at the moment. They don't have enough depth. They've lost by 18 goals to Southport. I can't see them beating Geelong up there.
This Saturday afternoon, we have 6 games coming your way. The first one, time-wise, the first one, Gold Coast and Southport, another early one, Jonty. This is at 11 a.m, the Suns and the Sharks at Metricon Stadium. These two teams met in round 6 earlier this year, where it was Southport by 79 points. They were far too good for the Suns that day. Do you see this changing this time around at Metricon Stadium on Saturday morning?
I hope they do play it on Metricon Stadium. It's been listed for the council training oval outside the ground, but the last time there was one scheduled there was against the Swans in round 2, and they did go inside the stadium. So certainly hope that they do get in. Either way, crowd get along to watch this one. Southport, no, they'll win, and they'll probably win by a similar margin to what they beat the Suns by. Having said that, Gold Coast up and about at the moment with 2 terrific come from behind wins. So if the Sharks aren't fully switched on, there could be a bit of cheek given, but I expect the Sharks to win well, and with all those Gold Coast rejects making another statement to their former club.
North Melbourne are back at Arden Street after having a close fought win there last week. They welcome Werribee, another standalone side, the Werribee Tigers there this week at Arden Street, 12 p.m. This will be an interesting one, Jonty. This will test the Kangaroos, who are coming off the back of 2 wins, albeit 3 or 4 weeks apart.
Yeah, massive step up though, isn't it? From no disrespect to Essendon and Coburg, but Werribee is one of the prime movers of the competition, and they have a hell of a lot to play for in this one. Tom Gribble plays his 100th VFL game, 96 for Werribee after 4 for Geelong as a top-up player at the start of his career. Congratulations to him, the reigning Liston medalist. So he's a champion of the competition. Looking forward to playing his 100th game for Werribee in a month's time. So we'll obviously look forward to that and speaking to him when that milestone comes up. It's also 50 games for Dom Brew for Werribee as well. So good luck to him in that contest. And I think, the Tigers should be far too strong in this one and continue on their merry way, pushing towards the top 4.
Coburg will play the undefeated Footscray Bulldogs. This is out at Highgate Recreation Reserve out there at Craigieburn, I think. Is it, Jonty?
Correct, yes.
Yep. Yeah, so this is at Sorry, this is a tough one for the Burgers coming up against the Bulldogs, who are in some pretty rip-roaring form. Their first home game this year, Coburg, albeit not at Piranha Park. We wait for that later in the season, but I would think Jonty suspect that the Lions might be up against it here against the Dogs.
Yeah, I think it might have come 1 week too early for them to get back to Piranha Park. By all reports at this stage, the next home game next week is still scheduled for Piranha Park. So hopefully that can happen and they can get home. But I think Piranha Park, Highgate Reserve, Whitten Oval, MCG,
the Moon,
Birchip Watcham, anywhere. Again, I expect Footscray to win this game, as they did. They went down and spoiled Frankston's 1000th game a few weeks ago. And I think they'll be too good for Coburg, who might have, really put a pinprick in the balloon last week against North Melbourne.
I'm glad they're not playing this one on the Moon. It's a terrible surface and players slip over all the time there. Collingwood and Frankston.
Plenty of elevation you'd be able to get though.
Collingwood at Frankston at the Holden Centre, Johnny. This is at 12:05. Frankston coming off a win that sent them back into the top 8, and Collingwood, who are of course coming off the bye, but obviously they had no football the 3 weeks preceding that, so they haven't played in a little while. They're back at the Holden Centre though. How do you see this one?
Yeah, possibly one of the most interesting games of the round, this one. Add another one to that for Collingwood, because they had the bye in round 6
the week before the lockdown.
So they actually haven't played since round 5. I think that's about the 15th of May, if I quickly bring that up. It was way back in round 5, the Magpies were in Sydney and they lost to the Swans by 33 points at Tramway Oval. So that is a long, long time ago. And yeah, so an advantage for them is that they've been able to keep training through as the AFL squad mostly. The VFL listed players obviously haven't been able to until last Friday. Before last week's game. So they've now had probably half a dozen sessions back in, but a little bit of rust there can be expected, and Frankston has to take advantage of this. They're probably the team that's most vulnerable to Richmond sitting outside the 8. So these games against teams that are sitting around them on the ladder, either just above, just below, as Collingwood are, the Dolphins simply have to win if they want to be there in the finals mix. I think they might. Freeman comes back in. If they beat the Bull Ants, a big step up on the Bull Ants. They beat them without Freeman, without Fordham, without Fletcher, and without Brolick. So if those guys all come back into the team, and I'm thinking apart from Brolick they might, then yeah, they would be a big chance against a rusty Collingwood to get the points.
Still on Saturday, Aspley come to Victoria to play Box Hill, top 4 bound Box Hill at Box Hill City Oval at 12:30. Box Hill just ticking along really nicely, Jonty. We've almost sort of forgotten about them. They had a heavy defeat to Casey in round 1, and since then they've actually been pretty good and find themselves in the top 4 10 rounds into the season. Play an Aspley team at home who are struggling. Are you leaning towards the Hawks in this one?
Yeah, no question about this one. The Hawks also lost heavily to Werribee. I think it was in round 3 or 4. That was their other defeat. But yeah, they're flying at the moment. They're playing at home. They're very hard to beat there at the best of times. It's a big challenge for the Hornets coming down here. And yeah, normally I would say the Hawks would have to watch out for Hamilman and to a lesser extent Stackelberg, who are kicking about 85% of Aspley's goals between them. But they are kicking all those goals, and Aspley are still sadly unable to find a winning score. So they'll give a bit of cheek, the Hornets, but you would expect Box Hill to win comfortably.
And then the final game on the Saturday is our broadcast game Saturday afternoon, Sandringham and Richmond at Trevor Barker Beach Oval, 2 p.m. Looking forward to this one very much, Jonty. We're seeing these two teams live for the first time this year. Two teams that have played already this year in round 1. The Tigers beat the Zebras by 40 points. That was, like I say, in round 1. Far too good that day, the Tigers. But Sandringham are playing a lot better at the moment. How do you see this one?
Well, they were playing a lot better before the bye. before the lockdown and the bye. So again, they haven't played for a while. They'll be hungry. Richmond's got a game under their belt last week. That cracker against Williamstown. They'll be up and running. They'll be up and about. And Sandringham will give a bit of cheek for a while, I think. But the Tigers should be too strong and run out convincing winners, probably by a similar sort of margin to round one. Yeah, although as we said, don't write off Sandringham because they'll give some cheek at home.
Looks like it's going to be a strong Richmond lineup as well that they pick, because they're starting to get a lot of their senior guys back from the injury list. The injury list is shrinking. I think they only had 4 VFL listed players play in that draw against Williamstown, such as the strength of their list at the moment. The Tigers, 4 games on Sunday. Jonty, the first one, Casey out at Casey Fields to play the Bombers. This is at 12 p.m. Casey normally pretty tough to beat out there, undefeated as well. It's going to be a tough ask, you would think, for the Bombers going up the Monash to play the Demons.
Yeah, definitely. Again, Casey didn't play last week, so there's a chance of a bit of rust there that could potentially make things a little bit tough for them. But yeah, you'd think Essendon, they look a little bit off the pace at the moment. If the injuries, they're still getting through at AFL level, but the injuries are biting at VFL level, and Casey will win and will win comfortably out there.
And then the Northern Bull Ants back at Preston City Oval to play Carlton. Of course, there'll be a lot of players playing in this one that know one another well. The Bull Ants, the old incarnation of the Bull Ants, the Northern Blues, for so long the reserve side of Carlton. This is an interesting matchup, Jonty. Do you think this may be a chance for the Bull Ants to perhaps spring their first win of the season against Carlton at Preston City Oval, 1 p.m. on Sunday?
I'm certainly not prepared to rule it out. The Bull Ants back at home, they always give a genuine fight, a genuine effort. They never give up, as we saw against Frankston on Friday night, when they had every expectation that they might have rolled over and got beaten by 80. They fought back and only lost by 30 or 28. So they'll fight it out. And if Carlton don't bring it for the whole game, then yeah, the Bull Ants have a chance. However, Carlton at the moment have got a very strong team in, pending the AFL selections, of course. They do lose Casbolt, who got himself suspended for an incident against Port Melbourne. He'll miss a week, which would cost him a chance to go back into the AFL as well. But if the likes of Mark Murphy are still running around in the VFL this week, it'll be too big an ask, I think, for the Bull Ants.
One of the most important games this week, Port Melbourne and Williamstown at ETU Stadium, 2 p.m. The famous old rivals, Jonty, go at it again, and Williamstown will be looking to probably, you would think, put the final nail in the coffin of Port Melbourne for season 2021. They did play earlier this year. We were there. It was in round 3. Williamstown beat the Borough by 38 points in a game that was pretty close for 3 quarters. How do you see this one?
I see it being very similar to that one. It's the Heritage game. Both teams wearing their Heritage Guernseys, as they always do in round 11. The Johnson-Callaghan Cup. They usually play in round 1 to Jerry Callahan's number at Williamstown and number 11 for Frank Johnson's number at Port Melbourne. So that's what brings us to this contest in round 11. Eli Templeton, 100 VFL games in this one for Port. Remember, we had Adam Marcon playing, I think it was 100 for Williamstown last time, and Tom O'Sullivan playing 100 for Port Melbourne. So plenty of milestones and plenty of extra spice being thrown into the contest. Port Melbourne has been very competitive in all of their losses, as we mentioned earlier. I think they'll be very competitive again. I think Williamstown might get them in the last quarter again, as they did in round 3. But have a listen to this just quickly from Eli Templeton. Start with last week, 49 disposals. Unbelievable stuff. He broke the record for most disposals by a Port Melbourne player since it was recorded. Toby Pinwell had 48 in 2015. 17 inside 50s broke the VFL record since that stat was being kept as well. So a brilliant performance. He couldn't be in better form going into game number 100. In his 55 games at Port, he's won a best and fairest. He's come second. He's come third. He's been team of the year 3 times on the wing, and now he's vice captain. So
Right.
certainly a decorated player, and he loves Port Melbourne. They love him. They'll give everything for him, but I don't think it'll be quite enough.
And in the final game, round 11 is the Giants, GWS Giants and Sydney at Giants Stadium, 4:45 p.m. There's a bit happening with this game though, Jonty. Do you want to explain what's happening?
Yeah, COVID issues, the outbreak up in Bondi in Sydney. The two clubs, Sydney and GWS, have had to get out of Sydney. They came down to Melbourne on Tuesday night, and the Giants brought, I think, 43 out of their 45 senior listed players. The Swans brought 33. So I would be surprised. I'm not ruling it out, but I would be surprised if this game actually takes place this weekend. Either if it does, it'll either happen in Sydney with no AFL listed Giants, or it'll happen, or if it happens in Melbourne, the Swans will have to go and find probably half a team of top-ups from the NAB League down here. So, yeah, expecting a postponement, but at this stage, it's on and we have to give a tip. And I'd be leaning just towards the Giants at home, even though the Swans won back in round 1, I think it was.
Okay, we wait and see what happens with that game. Hopefully they can get it off the ground.
If it's in Sydney, sorry, Brent, if it's in Sydney, the Swans will win because the Giants have got all their senior listed players down here in Melbourne.
Yep. No, we're here. Let's hope that we can get that game off and running, and it's not too compromised, because we know how much those two teams love playing one another and love belting the living daylights out of one another as well. So, and it's an important game for both teams too, as they're both sort of trying to get some momentum going and heading towards the finals. That is all for us this week, folks. Before we go, Jonty, do you want to send a get well soon message to one of our friends that ran into a little bit of strife over the weekend?
Yeah, certainly do, Brent. Everyone knows and everyone loves Michael Robinson, Robbo, the gentle giant from the Frankston Football Club, timekeeper for the last N number of years. Also scorer for the Richmond Cricket Club, Richmond Monash Tigers. In the Premier League cricket, sadly, tragically, was involved in a terrible car accident last Saturday afternoon, in which he sadly lost his mum, Heather. So he is recovering in the Alfred Hospital. He's been moved out of intensive care. So we certainly send all our best wishes to you, Robbo. We hope you're on your feet and back at the footy soon. And yeah, we're feeling for you, mate. Everyone at Casey Radio, everyone in the VFL family is feeling for you. And yeah, we just want to see you back as soon as possible. And hopefully the Dolphins can do you proud as you listen from afar on the weekend.
Yeah, no, well said, Jonty. And we hope, Robbo, just echoing that we see you around all the grounds in the not too distant future, mate. All the best. That'll do us for this week, gang. You're going to hear us at Trevor Barker Beach Oval Saturday afternoon for Sandringham and the reigning premiers. Richmond will be on air 1:30, the first bounce at 2 o'clock. And then on Sunday, a very, very important game for Port Melbourne to hopefully, for their sake, keep their season alive with a win over the old nemesis, Williamstown at ETU Stadium. Again, the first bounce, 2 o'clock. On air from 1:30, you and I, Jonty, looking forward to that. That's when you will hear us this weekend, everybody, and you'll see us again next week as well, as Jonty and I go through everything that we saw in round 11 and look forward to round 12, barring the world at the moment. Thanks for listening, everybody. You'll hear us again on the weekend and see us next week as well. For Jonty and myself, it's bye for now.